The kettle whistled at exactly 7:15. I poured the boiling water into the teapot. Jasmine. The same tin I had bought the month before my wife, Clara, passed, 5 years ago. The ritual was the anchor of my day, the blue ceramic mug, the same spoon. My son Leo called at 7:20, right on schedule. "Morning, Dad. Sleep okay?" "Like a log," I said. It was our script. I could hear his keyboard clacking in the background. "Good. Listen, the guy is coming to look at the water heater today. Between 10 and 2. I'll let him in. You just do your thing, don't worry about it." "I can let a man in, Leo." "Dad, it's no trouble. I've got the key. It's easier this way. You might forget he's coming. Then he's stuck outside. It's a whole thing." A soft sigh, meant to be patient. I said nothing. I sipped my tea. "It's just easier," he repeated. "How's the hip?" "It's fine." "Good, take your pill. I'll call after the plumber leaves." He hung up. I placed the phone on the counter. I looked out the kitchen window at my garden. The peonies were just thinking about budding. Clara had planted them. The house was quiet. It had been our house for 42 years. We bought it when Leo was 3. It was too big for me now. Everyone said so. Leo. My daughter, Mara, the neighbors, kindly. I never said it was too big. I liked the space. The memories were not heavy. They were quiet company. Leo started managing things after Clara's funeral. It was natural. I was grieving. Paperwork was overwhelming. He set up auto-pay for the utilities. He linked his phone number to the alarm system. He had a key. Then he suggested adding his name to my checking account. "For emergencies, Dad. If you fall, God forbid, and I need to pay a medical bill. It's a nightmare otherwise." It made sense. I agreed. Mara handled my medical appointments. She lived an hour away. She would drive in, take me to the doctor, speak for me. "Dad gets flustered," she'd tell the nurse. "He doesn't hear well. Let me explain." I heard perfectly well, but it was easier to nod. The control was a gradual shift. It was not a coup. It was a series of small, reasonable surrenders. Each one had a logical, loving explanation. Each one made me feel like a burden was being lifted. And with each lifted burden, a piece of my autonomy was neatly placed in a drawer and closed. The plumber came. I heard Leo let him in. I stayed in my study. I heard them talking in the basement. Leo's voice, confident, explaining, the deep rumble of the plumber. 2 hours later, Leo came upstairs. He popped his head into the study. All set. He replaced the valve. It was corroded, could have burst. I paid him from the joint account, the bills on the fridge. "Thank you, Leo." "No problem. That's what I'm here for. Oh, Mara's coming Saturday. We need to talk about the house." He said it casually, a throwaway line. He was already looking at his phone. "What about the house?" "Just some ideas to make things safer, easier. We'll talk Saturday." He left. I sat in my chair. The words safer and easier hung in the air. They were the words they always used before a change. Saturday arrived. Mara and Leo came together. They brought lunch from a nice deli. Sandwiches I didn't order, potato salad. We ate at the dining room table, the one Clara had refinished. We made small talk. They asked about my walks. They reminded me to use my cane. Then Leo put down his fork. He looked at Mara. She gave a small nod. "Dad," Leo began, "we've been thinking, this house is a lot for you. The stairs are a risk. The yard work is too much. The property taxes alone are staggering." Mara leaned forward. Her voice was soft. "We worry, Dad. What if you fall? What if there's an emergency? We're not right here." "I'm fine," I said. My voice sounded thin. "We know you feel fine," Leo said. "But the data shows risks increase dramatically at your age. We've done some research. There's a wonderful senior living community. Brand new, in Havendale. It's closer to Mara." "It's not a nursing home," Mara jumped in. "It's independent living. A beautiful apartment, maintenance-free, social activities, meals provided, you'd thrive. My throat felt tight. This is my home. It's a house, Dad, Leo said gently. A big, old, expensive house. The market is incredible right now. We could sell it, invest the proceeds. The money from the sale would cover the community fees for the rest of your life, with a great surplus for your care. My care is fine. Future care, Mara corrected. It's responsible planning. We want what's best for you. What's best is me staying here. Leo sighed, the patient sigh. See, this is what we were afraid of. You're getting emotional. You're not seeing this logically. The house is an asset. It's also a liability. It's our job to help you manage your assets wisely. I manage them. You used to, Mara said. Her tone was pitying. But Dad, you forgot to pay the property tax last quarter. Leo caught it. You've missed 2 doctor's appointments. I had to reschedule. The fridge had expired food last time I checked. I stared at her. I had no memory of forgetting the tax. I had the canceled check somewhere. The doctor appointments were changed by her office, not by me. The food was a single yogurt. I'm not senile, I said, but it came out as a whisper. Nobody said that. Leo's voice was suddenly loud. Then he softened it. We're saying you need help. We're offering it. This is a gift, Dad, a chance to relax, to be safe. They presented a folder. It had brochures for the Havendale Commons, floor plans, financial projections, a proposed listing agreement with a realtor already signed by Leo. You've already signed with a realtor. Just to get the ball rolling, Leo said. We need to move fast to catch the spring market. We can pack for you. We'll handle everything. You just need to sign here. He slid a paper across the table. It was a power of attorney document, durable, comprehensive. It gave Leo authority over all my property, finances, and medical decisions. My hands were cold. I'm not signing that. Mara's face fell. She looked wounded. Dad, don't you trust us? After everything we've done, we're only trying to protect you, from yourself even. That phrase, from yourself asterisk, it landed like a stone in my stomach. I need to think, I said. Of course, Leo said, gathering the papers, but his jaw was tight. Think about it, but the realtor is coming Tuesday for photos. The market waits for no one. They left the deli containers in my fridge. They left the folder on my table. They left a silence in the house that was different from before. It was no longer quiet. It was charged. I did not think. I observed. I went to my filing cabinet. It was an old metal thing in the study. I kept everything. Tax returns, insurance policies, receipts for major appliances. The property tax notice was there, and the copy of the check. It was cashed. I found the bank statement. The check had cleared. Leo had not caught an error. He had lied. I logged into my bank account online. Leo had set up the login for me. He wrote the password on a sticky note. I had never changed it. I scrolled through transactions. There were transfers. They were labeled home maintenance or dad's care. They went from our joint account to an account I did not recognize. The memos were vague. Contractor. Services. The amounts were not huge. $500, $800, but they were frequent. Over the last 2 years, they added up to nearly $30,000. I felt a strange calm. The emotion had been shock, then hurt. Now it was gone, replaced by a cold, clear focus. I began to document. I took pictures of the cashed property tax check. I printed the bank statements. I noted the dates of the transfers. I created a timeline in a simple notebook. I did not confront them. Confrontation would lead to more lies, to tears, to accusations of paranoia, to maybe, somehow, them making it all seem like my confusion. The realtor came on Tuesday. A cheerful woman named Stacy. Leo was with her. They walked through the house. Stacy praised the bones. She noted the outdated kitchen. She said the yard was a selling point. I sat in the living room. I watched them. "Your son is so wonderful," Stacy said to me. "So devoted. It's lovely to see family stepping up like this." I smiled a small, empty smile. After they left, I drove to the library. I used a public computer. I did not want any searches traced to my home Wi-Fi. I researched power of attorney laws in my state. I learned about financial elder abuse. I learned that a power of attorney is a fiduciary duty. It requires acting in the principal's best interest. It prohibits self-dealing. I found the website for the state's Adult Protective Services. I found the forms to file a report. I did not file one, not yet. I went to the county recorder's office. I requested a copy of my own deed. The clerk was helpful. I held the paper. It showed my name and Clara's name, just ours, no one else's. I felt the first flicker of something solid. It was not hope. It was a foundation, a fact. My next move was procedural. I needed a lawyer, not just any lawyer, one who specialized in elder law, in fiduciary litigation. I found one. Her name was Evelyn Reed. Her office was downtown. Her website was plain, no flashy promises. It listed her credentials. It mentioned experience with undue influence and asset recovery. I called from a pay phone near the post office. It felt oddly dramatic, but it was untraceable. I made an appointment. I said I was inquiring about estate planning. I met Evelyn Reed 3 days later. Her office was quiet, wood-paneled. She was a woman in her 50s, sharp eyes, a calm demeanor. I placed my folder on her desk. I did not speak. I let her look. She went through the documents, the deed, the bank statements with the transfers, the proposed power of attorney, the brochures for Havendale, my timeline notes. She looked up. "Tell me about your children." I told her, in simple sentences. Leo, the helpful manager. Mara, the caring coordinator, the gradual takeover. The conversation about the house, the lie about the taxes. She listened. She took notes. She did not react with outrage. She nodded. "This is a pattern," she said finally. "A common one. It's not about villainy, it's about entitlement. They see your assets as an extension of their own. They frame their actions as care. The lie about the taxes is key. It establishes a narrative of your incompetence." "What do I do?" "You do nothing," she said. "We do several things. First, we revoke any existing informal permissions. You will change every password. You will lock your credit. You will formally, in writing, remove your son's access to your bank account. We will send the letter from this office. And the money he took. We will send a demand letter for its return. It is a misappropriation of joint funds. It may be civil theft. That creates a paper trail. It shows we are treating this seriously. In the house. No one can sell your house without your signature, or a court order. They are trying to get the first. We will block it. The power of attorney document they want you to sign is a landmine. Signing it would give them the legal right to sell the house and pocket the proceeds. A chill went through me. The calm in her voice made it more real, not less. "What about the senior living community? The pressure?" "It's a tactic. They're creating a need to justify the liquidation of your asset. We ignore it. You are competent. You make your own decisions. Our job is to protect that legally." She outlined a plan. It was all paperwork. Letters, official filings, a cease and desist, a formal complaint to the bank about the unauthorized transfers. It was a quiet war, fought with ink and stamps. I followed her instructions. I went home. I changed my online banking password. I called the bank. I spoke to a fraud specialist. I removed Leo as a signer on the account. I placed an alert on the account requiring my in-person approval for any transaction over $500. I felt a tremor of fear when I did it. I was dismantling the system they had built. I was declaring independence. It felt dangerous. Leo called that evening. His voice was tense. Dad, I tried to pay the landscaper. The card was declined. What's going on? I changed the passwords, Leo. A long silence. Why would you do that? Did you forget them? I have them written down. I can help you. I didn't forget. I changed them. I'm managing my own accounts now. Another silence. This one was colder. Who told you to do that? Have you been talking to someone? Mara said you seemed confused the other day. I'm not confused. I reviewed the statements. I saw the transfers. I want the money returned, Leo, all of it. His breath hitched. What transfers? What are you talking about? Those were for your expenses, the plumber, the gutter cleaning, the services. $30,000 in services. I want an itemized list, and I want the money returned to the account. You're being paranoid. This is exactly why we need the power of attorney. You're losing touch with reality. Send the list, Leo, and the money. I hung up. My hand was shaking. I had never hung up on my son before. The next day, a certified letter arrived from Evelyn Reed's office. It was a formal demand for the repayment of misappropriated funds. It gave him 10 days. The reaction was not what I expected. It was not an apology. It was escalation. 2 days later, I was served with papers. At my own door, a process server handed me an envelope. It was a petition, filed by my son, Leonardo Miller, and my daughter, Mara Miller Collins. The petition was for the appointment of a temporary guardianship and conservatorship over my person and my estate. I sat at my kitchen table. I read the legal language. It claimed I was suffering from significant cognitive decline. It cited my forgetfulness with taxes and appointments. It mentioned my paranoid accusations about financial matters. It claimed I was a danger to myself due to my refusal of necessary care and my mismanagement of assets. It requested that Leo be appointed as my guardian and conservator. The supporting documents were attached. Affidavits from Leo and Mara. They were full of loving concern. They painted a picture of a onescapable man slipping into confusion and irrationality. There was also an affidavit from Dr. Anya Sharma, my primary care physician. Mara took me to her. It stated that during my last appointment, I exhibited signs of mild cognitive impairment. It noted I seemed forgetful of recent conversations and exhibited mild paranoia regarding family assistance. I read it twice. I remembered that appointment. Mara had done most of the talking. Dr. Sharma had asked me how I was. I said I was fine. She asked if I was feeling safe at home. I said yes. Mara had interjected, talking about my falls. I had one minor stumble on the garden hose. She spoke over me. I had stopped talking. The affidavit was not a lie. It was a construction. A narrative built from selective truths and professional observations filtered through my daughter's lens. This was the secondary attack. They had moved from persuasion to procedure. They were using the legal system to finalize what I had refused to give them voluntarily. The stakes were now absolute. If a judge granted this, I would be a legal child. Leo would have the power to sell the house, to control every dollar, to place me in Havendale or anywhere else. My refusal would mean nothing. I took the papers to Evelyn Reed. She read them. Her mouth became a thin line. This is a serious filing. Guardianship petitions are often granted if the court sees a risk. They have a doctor's statement. That carries weight. What do we do? We fight it. We request a hearing. We present evidence of your competence. We discredit their claims. We also countersue for financial elder abuse, for intentional infliction of emotional distress. We turn their attack into their liability. It sounds like a war. It is a war, she said calmly, but it's fought in depositions and medical evaluations, not with shouting. You will need to be examined by a geriatric psychiatrist of our choosing. We will get a neuropsychological evaluation. We will gather affidavits from people who know you, your neighbors, your friends. your pharmacist, anyone who can attest to your sound mind. The next month was a blur of quiet, draining activity. It was not dramatic. It was deeply tedious. I underwent a full day of testing with a Dr. Elias Vance. He asked me questions. He gave me puzzles. He tested my memory. He asked about current events. He was neutral, thorough. I met with a geriatric care manager hired by Evelyn. The woman came to my home. She interviewed me. She observed me cooking a meal. She looked at my pill organizer correctly filled. She inspected my home for safety. She wrote a report. Evelyn drafted affidavits. I took them to my neighbor, Arthur, who I played chess with every week, to Mrs. Green at the library who knew my reading habits, to my pharmacist, who noted I always picked up my medications on time and asked informed questions. Each conversation was humiliating, explaining to near strangers that my children were trying to declare me incompetent, seeing the pity and awkwardness in their eyes. But they signed. They said I was sharp, I was engaged, I was fine. Evelyn also began discovery on their petition. She subpoenaed Leo's bank records. She subpoenaed Mara's communications about the house. We found the emails between Leo and Mara, between them and the Havendale sales director. They were revealing. In one, Leo wrote, "The market is hot. If we list by May, we can clear at least $800K. After the mortgage, that's $750K. Havendale costs $5K a month. He'll live maybe 10 years. That's $600K. We net $150K minimum, plus we stop the bleed on his other expenses." Mara replied, "It's for his own good. But yes, the math works. We need to move fast before he gets any more stubborn ideas." Another email from Mara to the Havendale director. "My father is reluctant, but his cognitive state is deteriorating. We are pursuing legal options to ensure his safety. We should have guardianship soon, and then we can proceed with the deposit." Evelyn showed them to me. "Undue influence and self-dealing," she said. "They are discussing their profit from your incapacity. This is very powerful." The hearing date was set. It was in a small, bland courtroom, not a dramatic TV courtroom. It was more like a conference room with a judge's bench. I wore a suit. I sat beside Evelyn. Leo and Mara sat at the other table with their lawyer. They looked at me with expressions of profound sorrow and concern. They looked like grieving, dutiful children. Their lawyer presented first. He was a smooth, middle-aged man. He spoke of their devotion. He described their fears. He entered the affidavit from Dr. Sharma. He described my erratic behavior of changing passwords and making false accusations. Then Evelyn stood. She was quiet, methodical. She entered my deed into evidence, proof of sole ownership. She entered the bank statements with the transfers. She entered the demand letter and noted the lack of repayment or itemization. She called the geriatric care manager to the stand. The woman testified to my cleanliness, my organized home, my capacity for independent living. She called Dr. Vance. He testified at length about the neuropsychological evaluation. He stated conclusively that I showed no signs of dementia or significant cognitive impairment. He said my results were in the normal range for my age and education. He called Dr. Sharma's assessment cursory and likely influenced by third-party narrative. Then Evelyn entered the emails into evidence. She had them displayed on a screen. She read the key lines aloud. Her voice was flat without inflection. "The market is hot. We net $150K minimum. We need to move fast before he gets any more stubborn ideas. We are pursuing legal options to ensure his safety." The room was silent. I did not look at Leo or Mara. I looked at the judge, an older woman with a tired face. Evelyn finished. "This is not about care, Your Honor. This is a financial exploitation scheme disguised as filial piety. They lied about the property taxes to create a record of incompetence. They siphoned funds. They plotted to liquidate his primary asset for their own profit. They seek guardianship not to protect him, but to finalize their control and their payout. We ask that the petition be denied in its entirety. Furthermore, we ask that the court issue a protective order barring the petitioners from interfering with Mr. Miller's finances or person, and we will be pursuing our counterclaims separately. Their lawyer objected. He spluttered. He said the emails were taken out of context. He said the financial transfers were authorized. But the tone in the room had shifted. The judge's tired eyes were now sharp and alert. She asked Leo to take the stand. Under oath, Evelyn asked him about the property tax check. He stuck to his story. He said he found the overdue notice. Evelyn produced the canceled check and the bank statement. She asked him to point to the overdue notice on the statement. He could not. He fumbled. He said he must have been mistaken. She asked him about the purpose of the $30,000 in transfers. He gave vague answers. Home repairs, services. When pressed for specifics, for invoices, he had none. She asked him about the email discussing the $150K net profit. Was that for your father's care, Mr. Miller? It was part of the overall planning, for his benefit. The benefit of him living 10 years, so the math would work. Objection. Sustained. But answer the question, Mr. Miller. Was the sale of the house primarily for your father's needs, or for the financial outcome you described? Leo looked at Mara. He looked at his lawyer. He was trapped by his own words. It was for both. The judge dismissed him. She did not call Mara. She didn't need to. After arguments, the judge spoke. She did not give a long speech. She was concise. Petition for guardianship and conservatorship is denied. The evidence presented by the respondent is compelling and demonstrates not only capacity, but a calculated effort by the petitioners to manipulate and exploit for financial gain. The court finds the respondent fully capable of managing his own person and estate. She looked at Leo and Mara. The court is appalled by the conduct displayed here. Using the mantle of care to strip a parent of dignity and assets is a profound betrayal. A copy of this finding will be forwarded to the district attorney's office for review for potential criminal financial elder abuse charges. She then granted Evelyn's request for a protective order. Leo and Mara were legally barred from contacting me regarding my finances, my property, or my medical care. They were barred from attempting to initiate any further guardianship proceedings without clear, new, and compelling medical evidence from an independent, court-appointed examiner. It was over, in 45 minutes of quiet procedure. There was no shouting, no breakdowns, just the soft thud of a judge's gavel. Leo and Mara left the courtroom without looking at me. Their lawyer packed his briefcase quickly, his face red. Evelyn touched my arm. It's done, you're free. I nodded. I felt nothing, just a vast, hollow exhaustion. The aftermath was long and quiet. The district attorney did not press criminal charges. The burden of proof was higher, but the threat was enough. Evelyn pursued the civil counterclaim for financial elder abuse, for the return of the misappropriated funds plus punitive damages. Facing the prospect of a public trial and the judge's scathing order, they settled. Quickly. They returned the $30,000. They paid an additional $50,000 in damages and my legal fees. The settlement agreement included a confidentiality clause. Neither side could discuss the details. It also included a permanent, mutual no-contact order, except for communication through lawyers. I signed it. I wanted no more contact, ever. The money appeared in my account. It felt cold, tainted. I changed my will. I left the house and my remaining estate to a local historical preservation society. Clara would have liked that. They would keep the garden. Leo and Mara were erased from my legal existence. It was a surgical removal. Clean, final. I stayed in the house. The silence returned, but it was mine again, undisturbed. The peonies bloomed that spring. They were magnificent, a riot of pink and white. I cut a few and put them in a vase on the kitchen table, next to Clara's blue mug. People in town knew. Small towns know everything. I saw it in the looks at the grocery store. Pity, sometimes, curiosity, sometimes from people my age, a grim nod of understanding. I did not become a hermit. I went to the library. I played chess with Arthur. I tended the garden. My life was small, it was mine. A year passed, then two. I heard through the grapevine that Leo had moved out of state for a new job. Mara and her husband sold their house and moved closer to her in-laws. They were gone from this place. I thought I would feel triumph, or vindication, or even deep sadness. I felt none of those things. I felt a quiet, durable peace, the peace of safety, the peace of knowing my boundaries were now made of law, not just love, and they would hold. But sometimes, in the very early morning, before the kettle whistles, I lie awake. I think about the moment it all turned. It wasn't the petition. It wasn't the lie about the taxes. It was the phrase, the one Mara used. From yourself. They had appointed themselves protectors not just from the world, but from my own mind, from my own desires. That was the ultimate betrayal. It wasn't about money. Not really. It was about the erasure of my internal self. They decided my reality was invalid. My love for my home was sentimentality. My caution was paranoia. My autonomy was a problem to be solved. I protected myself with paperwork, with procedure, with the cold, clean light of the law. I won. But I am left with a question that has no answer. It echoes in the quiet rooms of the house they tried to take. When did my children stop seeing me as their father and start seeing me as a portfolio? The settlement funds sat in a new account, a high-yield savings. I had moved everything from the old joint account. Evelyn recommended a fee-only financial advisor, a man named Carl who asked no personal questions. We set up a simple, conservative plan. The money from Leo and Mara was segregated. I never touched it. It felt like evidence. The house demanded attention. The roof was aging. The furnace was from the 90s. I hired contractors myself. I got 3 bids. I signed the contracts. I wrote the checks. It was mundane. It was empowering. Arthur, my neighbor, started coming over more. He never asked about the court hearing, but he brought over a bottle of whiskey one evening. We sat on the porch. "Rough road," he said, pouring 2 glasses. "Yes." My sister went through something similar. Not as bad, just the constant, "When are you selling?" It wears you down. I nodded. We drank in silence. The cicadas sang. It was a comfortable quiet. Not the quiet of being alone, but the quiet of being with someone who doesn't need to fill the space. I started volunteering at the local historical society, the same one I'd named in my will. I cataloged old photographs. I had a good eye for detail. The work was methodical. It suited me. The director, a woman named Helen, was grateful. Most of our volunteers are students. They have good hearts, but the attention span of gnats. You have a historian's patience. It was not patience. It was a need for order, to place things in their correct context, to preserve a true record. Months turned into a season. Fall came. The peonies died back. I cut down the stalks and mulched the beds. I received a letter from a law firm, not Evelyn, a different one. It was on heavy, expensive paper. It was regarding the estate of a Leaner Vance. My aunt, my mother's sister. She had died at 94 in a care facility 3 states away. I had not seen her in a decade. We exchanged Christmas cards. That was all. The letter was formal. It stated that I was a named beneficiary in her will. The executor requested my contact information for the purposes of distribution. I felt a jolt of suspicion. It was immediate, a conditioned reflex. Was this a trick, some new scheme? I called Evelyn. She had the letter scanned over. She called the law firm. She verified their legitimacy. The executor was a trust company. It was all above board. Aunt Alina had left me something. It was not a life-changing amount, $15,000, and a trunk. The letter said the trunk contained family effects of sentimental value. It was in storage. I could arrange for it to be shipped. I gave permission. The money arrived via wire transfer. I added it to the segregated fund. The evidence pile grew. The trunk arrived 2 weeks later. A shipping company left it in my garage. It was an old steamer trunk. Leather straps. It smelled of dust and mothballs. I opened it on a Saturday afternoon. I expected linens, old books, perhaps some china. On top was a folded quilt, hand-stitched. Beneath it were photograph albums, letters tied with ribbon, and a small, locked wooden box. The key was taped to the inside of the trunk lid, a small brass key. I opened the box. It was not full of jewelry. It was full of documents, neat, yellowed papers. On top was a handwritten note on stationery. For my nephew, Thomas, I suspect you might understand this one day. Your mother never did. Love, Alina. Beneath the note were financial statements, old ones, from the 1970s. They were in my grandfather's name, statements from a stock brokerage. And a ledger, a handwritten ledger in my grandmother's precise script. It detailed monthly withdrawals, substantial ones. For years, the withdrawals were labeled, for Edward's law school, for Edward's house down payment, for Margaret's wedding. Edward was my father, Margaret was my mother. The final page of the ledger had a sum, a total, a very large total for that time. Next to it in the same script was written, loans against Edward's future share of estate, to be reconciled. I knew my family history. My grandfather had died when I was young. My grandmother followed a year later. Their estate was modest. It was split between my father and Aunt Alina. My father had been surprised it was so small. He'd blamed poor investments. He never spoke of it again. I sat on the garage floor. The dust motes swam in the light from the overhead bulb. Aunt Alina had kept the record. She had known. My father, her brother, had been advanced his entire inheritance during his lifetime. My grandmother had financed his life, his education, his home, his wedding, and she had kept a secret accounting. When my grandparents died, there was little left. My father assumed it was lost. Aunt Alina got the remainder. She never told him. She had just kept the truth in a box. I understood her note. I suspect you might understand this one day. This was a different kind of family betrayal. Quieter, hidden for decades, not for greed, perhaps, for a mother's love or a mother's weakness. It had rewritten my father's understanding of his own life. It had created a silent resentment between siblings that he never comprehended. I closed the box. I closed the trunk. I did nothing with the information. There was no one to tell. My father was gone. My mother was gone. The secret was inert, a historical artifact. But it changed something in me. It was a confirmation. This quiet manipulation of money and memory. This rewriting of family narrative through withheld truth. It was not an anomaly. It was a pattern. It spanned generations. My battle was not a unique tragedy. It was a variation on a very old theme. This realization did not sadden me. It steadied me. It placed my experience on a longer timeline. It made me feel less alone in my quiet house. Winter came, the first Christmas alone, truly alone. The no-contact order was absolute. I sent no cards, I received none. Helen from the Historical Society invited me for Christmas dinner. She was a widow. Her children were overseas. We ate turkey and talked about local architecture. It was pleasant. It was not family. When I returned home, the house was dark and cold. I turned on the lights. I started the furnace. I sat in my chair. I looked at the empty chair where Clara used to sit. I had not saved the house for us. I had saved it for me, for the right to my own silence. my own choices. That was the trade. I had my sovereignty. I had my walls and my garden and my memories, and I had the absolute absence of my children. I wondered if they thought of me, on Christmas, if they felt regret or only relief that the troublesome business was over, if they had rewritten the story in their own minds. Perhaps I was the villain now, a paranoid, spiteful old man who turned on his own flesh and blood. It would be easier for them to believe that. Spring returned, the third spring since the hearing. I was in the garden, turning the soil. My hip ached, but it was a good ache, the ache of use. A car pulled up, a sedan I didn't recognize. A woman got out. She was in her 40s, wearing a blazer. She carried a briefcase. She walked to the gate. "Mr. Miller." I stood, leaning on my spade. "Yes." "My name is Sarah Jensen. I'm an investigator with the State Department of Financial Regulation." She showed me a badge. It looked official. "I'd like to ask you a few questions about your son, Leonardo Miller, regarding his professional conduct." I did not invite her in. I walked to the gate. I kept it between us. "What about him?" "He is a licensed financial advisor in this state. Your case was referred to us by the county court. We are investigating a complaint of unethical practices, potential breach of fiduciary duty. Your testimony and your records could be very helpful." I looked at her. Her face was professional, neutral. "I signed a settlement agreement with a confidentiality clause." "I am aware. This is a state regulatory investigation. It supersedes private confidentiality agreements in matters of professional licensure. You are not prohibited from cooperating with us. Your cooperation is voluntary." I looked past her at the street. The peonies were budding. "Will it become public, a hearing?" "It may. If we find sufficient cause, there will be an administrative hearing. It could result in the suspension or revocation of his license. Fines." I thought about it. A new proceeding, more paperwork, more dragging the facts into the light. But this time it was not about my competence. It was about his. "Can I have your card? I need to speak to my lawyer." "Of course." She handed me a card. "We would appreciate any assistance. It helps protect other vulnerable people." That word, vulnerable asterisk, it did not sting anymore. It was just a category. I called Evelyn. She confirmed what the investigator said. The confidentiality clause did not bind me from speaking to state regulators. I could cooperate, or I could decline. "What do you want to do, Thomas?" she asked. Her voice was the same, calm, unpressured. "Do I have to see him, testify in a room with him?" "Likely not. Your deposition could be taken privately. Your documents speak for themselves." I thought of the ledger in the trunk, the multi-generational secret, the pattern. "I'll cooperate," I said. It took more time, more boxes of documents delivered to Sarah Jensen's office, a recorded video deposition in Evelyn's conference room. I answered questions. I showed the bank statements, the emails, the judge's order. It was easier this time. The emotion was fully drained from it. It was just a recitation of facts, a timeline of actions. 6 months later, I received a letter from the Department of Financial Regulation. It was a notice of proposed action. It stated that after investigation, the department intended to revoke the investment advisor license of Leonardo Miller. It cited dishonest and unethical practices, misappropriation of client funds, and fraudulent conduct. It gave him the right to request a hearing. I set the letter down. I felt no thrill, no satisfaction. I knew he would fight it. His career was at stake. He would hire another lawyer. He would spin a story. He would likely lose, but the process would be long. That was his problem now. It was no longer mine. My part was done. I had used the system as it was designed to correct a wrong. First to protect myself, then to hold him professionally accountable. It was a chain of consequence. It was quiet. It was procedural. It was just. Another year passed. My life settled into its final shape. It was a good shape. It had contours I recognized. My work at the Historical Society, my garden, my chess games with Arthur, occasional dinners with Helen. I had my health, my mind, my house. One afternoon, Helen and I were archiving a collection of old town council minutes. She looked up from her desk. "Can I ask you something personal, Thomas?" "You can ask." "Why do you volunteer here so much? You're one of our most dedicated, but you never talk about your own family history. You catalog everyone else's." I put down the paper I was holding. It was a minute from 1912 about paving Main Street. "I suppose I believe in preserving a true record," I said, "so the story isn't lost or rewritten." She nodded slowly. She was a smart woman. She didn't pry further. "Some stories are hard to keep," she said. "Yes, but that's when it's most important." That winter, I had a mild case of pneumonia. I drove myself to the urgent care. I called Arthur to let him know, in case I was kept. I was not. They gave me antibiotics and told me to rest. I lay in my bed. The house was very quiet. I thought about what would happen if it were worse, if I had a stroke, if I fell and couldn't get up. I had a plan. Evelyn had helped me set it up, an advanced healthcare directive. It named Helen as my healthcare proxy, not my children. A revocable living trust held the house. Carl, my financial advisor, was the successor trustee. Instructions were clear, precise. It was a fortress of documents. It would keep me safe, even if I was not conscious to defend myself. I recovered. The days grew longer again. On a warm June evening, I was watering the garden. The peonies were in full, glorious bloom. A car slowed in front of the house. It did not stop. It just slowed. It was a dark SUV. The windows were tinted. I could not see the driver. It paused for maybe 5 seconds. Then it accelerated and drove away. I stood with the hose in my hand. The water pooled around my feet. I did not know if it was Leo, or Mara, or a stranger looking at the flowers. It did not matter. They could look. They could not come in. That was the boundary, visible but impermeable. I turned off the hose. I went inside. I made tea, jasmine in Clara's blue mug. I sat at the kitchen table. I looked out at the garden. The blooms would only last a week or two. Then they would be gone until next year. That was the nature of things. I had won my quiet, dignified justice. I had my house, my peace, my life on my own terms. The cost was my children, the future I thought I had, the family dinners, the grandchildren visits that were already rare and now were impossible, the simple, unquestioned love that is supposed to flow down the generations. I had chosen myself over that. I had no regret. It was the only choice that allowed me to remain myself. But here is the question that remains, the one that haunts the quiet rooms, not with sound, but with its absence. Is a victory that leaves you utterly alone still a victory? The house does not answer. The peonies nod gently in the evening breeze. They will return next year, whether I am here or not.